Thanks, Dustin. Thanks, everyone, for coming on. Obviously Tuesday was a rough day around here for our program. My heart breaks for our players. They've worked really hard over the last couple of months here, and through no fault of their own, football's been taken away from them. We've had guys that have gone through some extensive rehabs to get back in an effort to play in the best shapes of their lives. We have guys that are ready to go play their senior seasons, which is their last shot. And to tell them that there's no football now is a tough pill to swallow and hard for all of us. Obviously, it's postponed. But one thing I can tell you, I'm extremely proud of the work that these guys put in and how they've adjusted. This has been really, really fluid for all football programs across the country. And the one thing that we've talked to our players about constantly is that there's always going to be change, and it would be a really fluid situation. And to each and every one of our players, they've done a tremendous job of just handling the uncertainty and not knowing and adjusting with everything thrown their way. We laid out a plan and asked them to adhere to some strict protocols since June 1st, and they each have done everything we've asked of them. And again, we've had 0 positives since July 8th, and that's a credit to them. They wanted to do the things necessary to give themselves a chance to play. Right now, where we are as a program is we're in the process of creating a plan for this fall. We're allowing our players to remain on campus and continue to work out. Obviously, if they decide to remain on campus and work out, they'll still have to adhere to the protocols that are in place, which allows us to have a safe environment for our players. Players and staff who continue to work will continue to have to be tested regularly. And we're hoping that they take advantage of this extra time to improve physically, mentally, and in the classroom as we start classes here on August 31st. We'll continue to watch things as the NCAA comes out with information on eligibility, as the Big Ten Conference comes out with information on the possibilities of what a spring/winter schedule looks like. And we'll be prepared to make adjustments as we see fit and hopefully begin preparation here. And with that, I'll open it up to any questions you guys may have.
We'll start with Daniel from the Baltimore Sun.
Hey, Coach Locksley. Thank you for doing this. I just wanted to ask, just over the past few days and since you guys opened up preseason practice, just how difficult was it to kind of keep things going given all the outside noise, and did you end up kind of adjusting the practice schedule? Like what did you do? Because I know some programs had kind of adjusted their schedule given the news that was coming out.
Yeah, I think the big thing, and we've been pretty consistent with the message for our team and how we would prepare, is that whatever the terms for how we could operate on each individual day, as opposed to looking down the road, that we were going to operate by how and what the rules were for that day. And so, as we prepared for the start of training camp, it was business as usual. We got 2 helmet practices in before the information kind of changed, and that the Big Ten decided for us to not progress in the shoulder pads. And so we, again, adjusted because that's how the rules changed for us, I think, on Saturday after we got done with our second helmets practice. And we were prepared to go on Monday. Sunday was their normal day off, and we're prepared to go Monday, helmets again. And then as the information continued to change and adjust, we made the decision as a program, I made a decision for our program, that until we had some information that we needed, that we would pause practices and meetings. We stayed in our semi bubble over at the hotel, which was the host of our training camp. We did that Sunday, which was their day off. We did it again Monday as well as Tuesday before the information that came out late Tuesday. So did we adjust? Yeah, we adjusted in terms of not going out and continuing to practice. I didn't feel it was in our best interest as a program to put our players in harm's way without knowing the direction that we were going to go as a conference. And we made that decision to not practice and to not do any more football meetings until we had a definitive answer from the Big Ten.
Emily from the Washington Post up next.
Hey, Mike. Thanks for doing this. I know you might not have a great idea yet or have guidance on this, but what will the fall look like in terms of what the athletes can still receive, whether that's support or contact with coaches? Or do you have any sense of what they'll get or be allowed to get in the facility with you guys?
I mean, as of right now, the rules that we're of the understanding is that we were in phase 3 here in the state of Maryland, and with our preparation for the season, as far as specific things, right now we're still formulating those based off of the information we get from the Big Ten, as well as the NCAA, and that's why we took, the next few days here as a coaching staff to kind of be able to put together a plan moving forward. But I would anticipate we'd have some discretionary time with our players to where they would continue to be able to lift and train and condition. We'd be able to continue to meet. We'd be able to maybe have some types of skill development, maybe not as a whole, but individual skill development things. But, that's kind of what we're in the process of trying to organize and put together to allow us to move forward here.
Sean from WMAR.
Hey, Coach Locksley. Hope you're well. I was just wondering, when all of the information became official a couple days ago, I guess that was Tuesday, right? How did that go down between the players finding out, you meeting with the players? Was there a meeting? Was it virtual? Was it in person? I mean, and how, if you could describe what that was like, it must have been really difficult.
Well, it was difficult, one, because of the timing of everything. As a program, I always feel like it's in our best interest for the players to hear it from us and not necessarily find out about it through the media. Obviously, there's some sensitive issues in the timing of when the Big Ten released it and us being able to communicate to our players, which, Damon Evans, our athletic director, and all our leadership staff here on campus did a great job of creating a timeline that, one, afforded us the opportunity to communicate to our players before they heard it from the media. And so the way it worked for us is because we were already in a pause in terms of we weren't meeting and practicing, our players were still over at our training camp headquarters. And I met with Damon, I want to say at 1:45. At 2:00, 2:30, we had a all-staff head coaches meeting where the information was passed on to us of what the Big Ten's position would be on pausing the season. And then I know the Big Ten had planned on releasing it at 3. We had a 2:45 meeting with all of our fall sport student athletes where the information was passed to those guys. And then from the Big Ten, right around 3:00, I scheduled a team meeting, which was virtually. We had a virtual team meeting to kind of give them some next steps for the next couple of days, where we basically checked them out of the hotel. A lot of them checked out that day. They have living arrangements right here near campus, had already been taken care of, and some guys stayed for an extra night. And then we talked a lot about the next couple of days getting away from it while we formulated a plan and we got more information as to how we can move forward. And so that's where we are today.
Heather, NBC4.
Hi, Coach. Like everybody, thanks again for doing this. I know it's a tough time for you and the coaches and players. How, I guess, tough is it that some of these other conferences may go ahead with the season? And certainly, I know you don't want to talk in hypotheticals, but and the spring situation and how. So I guess it's kind of a twofold question. Just and knowing all the efforts that you put in to the zero positives and all the efforts that you and your players and the sacrifices. So kind of how difficult was that, knowing all the work you put in, knowing that some of these other conferences say they're going ahead, and also lastly, just kind of, can you even envision a spring something at this point? I think Purdue's coach was already having a plan and stuff. So I know a lot of questions in there, so I'll let you take it away.
If I can remember, your first one was how did we feel when we found out the news? Is that what you said? The first question? Yeah, like 3 different ones rolled up. You're muted, Heather. I can't hear you.
Okay, thank you, Dustin.
Okay,
Yeah, so no, the biggest one is just knowing that these other conferences are going ahead, and knowing all the protocols and what you did. Just how much more difficult did that make? Just hearing all of this.
Well, I mean, what made it difficult was obviously knowing that the players had made some sacrifices, and the players, staff, our support staff, had all made tremendous sacrifices from June 1st to get us to this point to see if we could play. So the disappointment is obviously in finding out that we decided to pause it. But a lot of people came in and were involved in this decision, from medical people to presidents to campus, athletic directors, even student athletes. We're all kind of brought into the decision making with pausing it. And so when you're looking around the country, I mean, obviously each an individual conference, and this is why we join a conference, they have their individual rights as a conference to what they seem or deem their ability to keep their players safe and healthy to play. For us, I'll concentrate on the Big Ten. I got the utmost confidence in all the people that played a role in this decision, that it was made for the right reasons, which is this health and safety of our student athletes first and foremost. And so with that, again, not comparing what others are doing and really focusing on what we can do. And for me, I've always been a glass half full guys that, how do we move it forward? Because now the decision was made. Well, we know that. Well, how do we move it forward? And that's what I put a lot of my attention into the last day and a half.
Charla, WSA 9.
Hey there, Coach. You mentioned in your opening remarks how tough it was to talk to these players, especially the ones that have been rehabbing and going through every step they can to make sure that they are healthy and they can play this season. You take a guy like Jake Funk. What did you say to him? Because obviously he's coming off 2 torn ACLs, and he was looking forward to this season more than anything. What are his emotions like? Did you have a personal conversation with him? And as a coach, how do you feel for guys like that?
Obviously, again, Jake is one of those guys. He's part of our leadership group here within our team. And so I've had constant communication with those guys. And Jake has been at the forefront of it, a guy that's been around here and seen a lot and well respected amongst his peers. And as his coach, obviously knowing what he's gone through injury-wise and how hard he's worked to get back to this position, like I said in the beginning, really disappointed for him. But moving forward, I think this gives us more opportunity to get him as healthy and give him more time to recover, so that, I envision us having a spring, whether it's start of January or whenever they decide to put out the format in which we'll do it, that Jake Funk is the type of player that will do what he needs to do to have himself prepared to play.
Marcus, you're next.
Unmute me. Okay. How, as a coach, how hard was it, just speaking from, in your role as the coach of the Maryland football team, how hard was it to be totally supportive of the decision, given some of the comments that other coaches around the Big Ten made?
Again, what other guys feel and how, I've always been a big take care of our wheelhouse, take care of our house here. And, in communication with our players, obviously, we were a program that had 6 guys opt out because of COVID. So I do know it was and is a concern of our team. My job is to find out and lead the team. And so we spent a lot of time in communicating to our players, how we could and how we would try to create an environment where they could play the game and stay safe and healthy. So, Don, the best way I can put it is that, I know our players, there's a bunch of them that wanted to play, and had we made the decision to play, we were going to do all we could as a staff and as a support system here to put them in the best positions to be successful.
And just one quick thing, in terms of players staying on campus, if they don't have, if all their classes are online, do they have the ability to go home, or are you keeping everybody on campus just so the team is, around each other?
Well, obviously, because of the way we've operated is obviously the opt-in and opt-out, if we were to use those 2 terms. And what we've done in the past, that guys that have decided to opt in, which means that they want to move forward with preparation for a spring season, whenever that may start. Once you opt in, there's some things that you have to do, which means you have to be regularly tested. You have to follow the protocols we have in place in our campus community, filling out the survey on a daily basis, temperature checks, social distancing, all those things we have in place here. And so once we kind of get some direction here from the conference, which we expect here in the next day or two, as well as the NCAA with the eligibility piece of it, then we'll be able to formulate a plan, and guys that want to opt in to prepare for a spring season, will be required to be here, because we will be doing things within our program to help them prepare for it. The people that opt out, as we saw even leading into training camp, obviously would not be required to do any of these things and would not be required to stay here on campus or near campus to participate. They're able to go home or stay here and do the schoolwork and still be supportive. We'll still be supportive of them as they're part of our team moving forward. But the guys that opt in are the guys that then position themselves into where there's some mandatory things that come along with opting in.
Lila, Testudo Times.
Hey, Lox, how are you?
What's up, Lila?
You mentioned kind of the schedule that you guys had just over the past few days with everything going on. How did you kind of guide the players through just having that, period of uncertainty through, Sunday and Tuesday when, there's just so much stuff circulating online?
Well, I think it starts with the communication piece. Sunday was their day off. We had 2 really good practices, I thought, from an energy standpoint, and you saw the things we worked on in terms of the mental preparation was there. And so with Sunday being their day off, we really worked and focused on recovery at that point, and it was already an expected day off, so that wasn't hard for us. We still had a team meeting on Sunday to review Saturday's practices, and it was business as usual. And it wasn't until Monday when, again, as the information leaked out across social media and the media platforms, that I felt it was in our best interest to pause things until we had a clearer understanding of the direction we wanted to go. Because the last thing I wanted to do was take a team out, practice, have injuries, and then, all of a sudden we're not playing. And I've gotten a couple guys injured because of going out and without the certainty of what we were doing. And so in hindsight, it was probably the best thing we could do for our team. And during that period, we tried to communicate as much as we could as we got information. And to me, that's been the hardest piece of being the leader of it, is there were still way more questions than answers. And a lot of the information that was coming out, we weren't necessarily privy to. So that was the hard part of navigating that, because, as you know, information is so available to kids nowadays, and they would be finding things out and seeing things on social media before I even could see it. So trying to navigate that was a tough part, but we did it by keeping an open line of communications with our players.
Ike with Fox 5.
Coach Locksley, thanks again for this time. We're talking obviously right now, the season has been postponed. There's a very real possibility that the season may not even happen in the spring. Has there been any talks in terms of eligibility and academic scholarships for some of the seniors who may actually need this year? Has there been any talks with the Big Ten, maybe obviously with the school? Just want to know about that. Thanks.
Everything eligibility-wise starts with the NCAA, and I know there's been talk, and there's been some meetings that have been held here the last day or two with the NCAA and the board of directors in terms of eligibility. And it'd be my expectation, kind of what took place this spring with some of our spring sports that lost eligibility or that didn't play, that the NCAA is going to obviously grant seniors that are exhausting eligibility an extra year and maybe cement some a little more concrete answers. So I would envision, guys that have a year of eligibility left, that if the season is canceled, which right now is just postponed, that they would be given another year of eligibility. But then that creates another issue on campus where, from a fiscal standpoint, say you have 25 seniors graduating and you're bringing in 25 guys, and the NCAA allows you to do both. So now we find ourselves in a situation where we possibly have 110 guys on scholarship, which financially, I don't know if we be able to do that. So there's still more questions than answers. I do anticipate the NCAA coming out with a little more concrete answers on the eligibility piece, which I think will be in favor of the student athlete being able to retain the year of eligibility if we were to not play, and then give us and the ability on our campuses to figure out how and if we would be able to manage those types of numbers.
Winston with ABC 7.
All right, okay, great. Coach, thank you again for doing this. You know, as the leader of the program, you have to think about everything going forward and in the future. When you look at it, if the season is postponed to the spring or even not played at all, you're going to have an influx of players possibly due to recruiting. I know this is something that you're not even thinking about as of right now, but how does this affect your recruiting?
Yeah, again, like I said, we're operating under the guise of what the rules we have today. And for that, you know, we're actively recruiting our 21 recruiting class. We're off to a good start with it. And so based on where we are today as a program, and that's really the only way you can operate, because there are just so many dynamics and there's such a fluid situation and how it will play out. But again, just like I told our team, we've got to be ready to adjust. I don't foresee there being an issue with being the recruiting process for our 21s. I think the big question mark will be, you know, from a fiscal standpoint, if the NCAA grants the extra year of eligibility, if we were to not play, how does that work out for us here in the Maryland's campus community? So for us, we're operating as if we're going to play until I hear different. So which means our seniors will be able to get their year in and be able to add to their resumes, whether it's academically or athletically. And we'll continue to move forward with bringing in a new class of players to help fill their voids.
We're going to try to get to everyone's questions. We have time for about 3 or 4 more. Jeff Ehrman, Inside Maryland Sports, you're next.
Hey, Mike, does this, you mentioned looking at a glass half full from a recruiting perspective. Does this help you out? You know, these other teams have to worry about game prep and games every week, and you can focus on recruiting, maybe not worry about your commits visiting those schools because of the dead period, things like that? Or is it a challenge because they can say to a kid, look at what we did on TV last weekend and that sort of thing?
Yeah, I mean, I don't see it as a challenge. I think, you know, like I said before, we've spent a lot of time recruiting the class that we're bringing in for the 21 cycle. I mean, and we spent the last couple of years since we've gotten on campus developing the strong, meaningful relationships with them. Obviously, you know, with us possibly the postponement of our season kind of just pushes things back, but I don't know if it's an advantage or a disadvantage other than it really gives us more time to, one, continue to develop our football program here, the ones we have here, which are the most important, while at the same time, two, putting the energy and effort into solidifying the future of Maryland football, which is the recruiting piece of it, which we do in conjunction throughout the course. That's how we operate. We're always working to recruit and take care of the players in our program, while at the same time also evaluating and bringing in the next wave of guys. So, you know, we'll continue to do that with the time we have on our hands. We still need to develop our program here, the guys that will be here on campus that decide to opt in, to make sure that they're prepared to be able to play whenever that spring or winter season starts. While at the same time, we've got to also build this program via recruiting and make sure we continue to develop relationships with the 21, 22, and 23 classes as we try to move the program forward.
And a quick unrelated follow-up. Do you have an early feel for like what percentage of the guys on campus will stick around as opposed to head home?
I don't, because again, I had a team meeting right after the news passed that we were going to pause or postpone the season to kind of give them next steps in terms of, you know, how we would check out of training camp, and that once I got more information via NCAA eligibility, conference, Big Ten conference, moving forward as to what we can and can't do, you know, with the start of school coming up, as well as on campus, you know, how we wanted to move forward. So as we continue to figure that out here the next day or two, we'll reconvene as a team virtually and put things into motion to be able to answer a lot of the questions that you guys have, that I'm sure our players have as well. But it's a matter of making sure we have the information first and not just kind of meet to give them the problem. So I expect to be able to have answers, a lot more answers here in the next day or two, and then put a plan in place. And we're working on it now. And our strength and conditioning coaches are all working on some hypothetical deals. Our staff has a plan moving forward where, we will virtually game plan the season we had already scheduled, so that we're continuing to move forward as a staff, and then, obviously put our players in the best possible position here over the next few months to be able to play a spring or winter season whenever that is determined.
Scott Green, Terrapin Sports Report.
Hey, Mike.
Hey.
Yeah, most of my questions here were answered, but I just had one final question, kind of looking through this list here. You guys did a great job, throughout the spring, really keeping the Maryland brand at the forefront, with things like you were doing with that late night with Locks and things like that, even getting some national notoriety, having some great guests. With extra time here in the fall, do you see yourself doing this kind of stuff moving forward to kind of keep the Maryland football brand, kind of at the forefront in people's minds?
Yeah, it's going to be really important that we continue to push the Maryland brand. There's a balancing act of making sure that we're doing everything we can. And again, first and foremost, is the development of this team, and making sure we have processes in place to allow us to develop, whether it's a skill development, whether it's in the weight room, conditioning, even mentally. These kids have been through a lot. The ups and downs, the roller coaster ride of emotions that we get in spring ball taken from us, coming back in June with the mindset of playing a season and then having the season postponed. So there's some things and work we have to do on campus with our players to make sure that they're in great places or in a great place, while at the same time putting together a plan for us to push the Maryland brand, which is really important for us to move the program forward.
We'll wrap today. Emily, you can get the last question.
I guess first, so 2 parts, but I'll split it up. Logistically, the guys who have opted out for the season, would they possibly opt in for the winter spring season if that happens, or by opting out the fall, they're not going to be here for the preparation and therefore wouldn't play? Do you know how that might work?
Well, the way I see it, whether we were playing a season or not, the guys that opted in chose to opted out to do the preseason workout. So that's not an area that I've kind of even thought about just yet, Emily. Obviously, we'll handle a lot of them on a case-by-case basis. I know based on the guys and the ones that opted out, some of them that I talked to played their last football here, and they're very solid or feel very strongly about that. So we'll manage and handle those on a case-by-case basis. Obviously, as we get more information and I can bring a little more clarity as to what the fall looks like for us, how we're planning on preparing, what we'll be allowed to do to prepare, and then put those out there for guys. There may be more guys that decide to opt out based off of what we're allowed to do or not allowed to do. So again, very fluid from that standpoint. We'll monitor it. We'll handle them on an individual basis.
And then I was just going to ask, what are your thoughts on the feasibility of having 2 possible seasons in a calendar year? And are there any concerns there? As just someone who's been around football a while.
Yeah, I've had a chance, been on some phone calls here with head coaches and ADs here in the conference, and I do know that our coaches, along with our athletic directors and administrators, have been really creative in the thought process behind it. From the information that I've been able to take from these meetings, there is no doubt that you could play a winter/spring season, still leave time, again, a long enough break of more than possibly 6 months for guys before we start the 21 season. I know the goal for us as coaches in the conference here are to make the 21 season as normal as possible and not have it kind of overlap and deal with starting late or not being able to finish. So I know a lot of thought has gone into it, and there's still a working group within the Big Ten organization that are putting together some infrastructures to see how we can best model this thing. But from the early things that we've been able to discuss, I've been really pleased with knowing that it's definitely feasible to do it, and while also keeping player safety and health in the forefront of it, and not playing too many games in 1 year, 1 calendar year. So I feel good about the way that the infrastructure looks, and I anticipate us being able to pull it off.